George Lambert's life and art seemed on the surface enviable, and perhaps for the most part it was. As a young art student at Julian Ashton's in the mid-70s, I saw many of his drawings adorning the walls, and one in particular, his study of hands, was especially memorable. He professed an insistence that the basis of all good art was drawing, an important tenet in that school's philosophy. His painting across the black soil plains in the collection of the Art Gallery of New South Wales and painted in 1899 was a triumph of studied dynamism, where the strength and physicality of horses pulling a seemingly impossible weight through a muddy quagmire said something important about the energy and determination of rural Australia at that time. The nationalist fervour of this painting would not be repeated again save for the Gallipoli paintings he did after returning from a short stint as war artist in 1918-19. Although technically masterful, Lambert, for perhaps practical reasons, fell into doing society portraits and group studies. One, also in the Art Gallery of New South Wales collection, called Important People, always struck me as being stiff and a little contrived, although it was cocking a snoop at the class system in England at the time. After returning to England at the end of World War I, he packed his things and immediately returned to Australia, leaving his often painted wife and 2 children in London. He was joined by the wonderfully enigmatic Thea, who had been living with the artist and his family in England previously, and like them had posed for many portraits and group paintings. Thea herself was a talented artist and designer and had studied at the St John Wood School of Art, and perhaps more responsive to the burgeoning modernist direction European art was taking. Lambert was sympathetic and did respond somewhat, especially in the face of more conservative attitudes he encountered back in Sydney. He did struggle with ill health, not helped by contracting malaria while in the Middle East, and his work ethic allowed little time for rest. In the State Library collection, I came across a small study named simply A Man, amongst a group of half-completed painting sketches of horses, a lifelong obsession. It appears to be painted over the torso of a female figure. In an article by writer Robert Desai entitled Love, etc., and based on Lambert's character and relationships, he draws attention to the conflicting impulses in Lambert's life. The domestic, symbolised in his paintings of women's gloves, which appears semi-regularly in his work, and the sculpted head of Pan, a symbol of wild nature, what Desai called robust, lusty, forceful and pagan, a solitary wanderer living in caves not at home.
My dear Thea, leaving London Tuesday week, I'm glad to have finished my commission. I feel I've produced some worthwhile paintings since returning from abroad. I could never be happier than I was in Cairo. In fact, ridiculously happy. Bean was splendid company on our excursion to Gallipoli. But such a loss and tragedy can never be justified, especially when so many Australian and British still lie in those tortured hills. Locals have taken what they can from the area, and the sight caused me utter distress. The malaria still rattles the bones from time to time, but I've put up a good appearance. Amy and boys were distraught at learning of my departure, but I can't stay in London a moment longer. You alone would understand. Maurice and Constant are both getting on with it, bringing a host of welcome distractions for my dear thing Amy. Constant has his love of music, and Maurice seems to be more enamoured of the sculptural arts. He helped me transfer the drawing I did of the Anzac landing onto canvas, which I plan to finish when I return to Sydney. The commission from the Faulkners of Wanganilla Estate is a chance to make my statement about our country's wonderful heritage through our robust rural industries. I shall make a start as soon as I disembark. It will be ready for the April opening of the War Museum in Melbourne next year. I will bring the charcoal portrait I did of you in 1905 And when I can afford it, I would like to have the oil I did of you, amongst others, shipped back as well. I learnt that Eunice has gone back to Rotterdam to reunite with her husband, which must be an unhappy development for you, as I know that your friendship with her was a comfort to you both. I have a parchment of palm leaf scroll given me by William Russell on his journey through Ceylon on his way here. Neither he nor I read Tamil, but in its pages lie moral sayings which, in its gifting to me, seem to suggest a light-hearted jibe at my somewhat ambiguous moral order. If only I could open it to find a list of directions replete with wisdom and certainty. Perhaps it is there, but the language is unknown to us. It seems my pan and white gloves shadow me through life, and I struggle to reconcile the two. The old conundrum, domesticity and the wild. Are you the Isolde to my Tristram? But that would be unfair. You, moreover, would be Artemis, goddess of abundance, fertility, hunting, and longevity, who was angered when she discovered the mere mortal Actaeon looking at her naked form. As punishment, she turned him into a stag and set her hounds on him to tear him apart. I do at times feel like that stag, and as a shy act for my humble admiration for you, added a rendition of that myth to your oil painting. Of course, your ever-forgiving temperament would, I'm sure, balk at such an horrific dispatch of my ardour, but the outcome would, I'm afraid, be of my own authorship. I would like to believe the moral sayings buried in this scroll would be sympathetic to your passions and a world open and various in its acceptance of the Pan myth and other fabled places in the Aegean. Life and art is indeed mysterious and in the end unknowable, but your vision is of the future, and I look forward to the coming adventure of companionable industry towards that future. Yours, George.